Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome back to the Poetry of Painting. So this week we have the great pleasure of having Roz Ottery join us. Now, Roz was supposed to join us last week, and I think most of you probably know by now that unfortunately somebody very inconsiderately drove into the back of her car and caused an accident. So it meant that unfortunately she wasn't able to join us last week. But this week we have her back, and we have a special evening for you tonight with something a little bit different. So let me get Roz on the screen. Here we go. Hi, Roz. How are you?
Hi, Fiona. I'm very well this week. Thank you very much.
Oh, what an awful day you had last Wednesday. I'm so glad that you're okay, though. That's the main thing. So, yeah.
And it was made worse by the fact that I knew that I was going to miss the show, and unfortunately, in the aftermath of what happened, the phone had charged underneath the seat with the bump, and I hadn't realised, and off they went with my car on the back on the back of the lorry, and my phone was in it, so I couldn't contact anybody, and I was completely up the junction. So there you go. But nevertheless, these things are meant to try, aren't
Indeed, and it was just a show. The main thing is that you were safe and that you weren't hurt. So that's great. So Chris says, hi Fiona, nice to be with you again. Hi Chris, great to have you with us. And Chris says, good to see that you're well, Roz. So thank you very much, Chris. I'm sure Roz appreciates that too. And welcome to everybody who's joining us, whether you're on live or replay. Great to have you along. And we do have something a little bit different for you this week. So what we're going to be doing, Roz has also written a poem about one of my paintings, As Normal, which we will come on to in just a minute. But what she's also going to do for us tonight is work her magic on a painting that she hasn't seen before. And later in the show, once we've dealt with the poem that she's already written and heard that, which I'm sure will be beautiful because your poems are always beautiful, Roz, then she's going to be composing a poem about the mystery painting live on the show and telling us about her process. So I'm just going to show all of you viewers and Roz the painting now. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it at the moment, so it's not going to influence Roz and what she's writing. So, oh, we've lost Roz. I'm sure she'll be back in a minute, and then I'll show you the painting. Okay, so I will hold off showing you that just for a minute. Hopefully Roz will be able to get back in. I heard some crackling on the line there, so I'm not sure what's going on with her phone. We seem to be a little bit jinxed with Roz on the show at the moment, but hopefully we'll get her back on. Actually, I'll just tell you a little bit about the painting that Roz has already written a poem. Oh, she's coming back.
I'm
Here we
here.
go.
I don't know
You're
what
back
happened.
again. Not to worry. Absolutely. I was just saying we're a bit jinxed, but hopefully that's it and everything will run smoothly now. So I'm just going to show you the painting, the mystery painting. I say not tell you anything else about it so that Roz isn't influenced by me at all. So I will add it to the screen. This is your mystery painting, Roz.
Lovely.
So have a look at that. I will take it off and then I'll put it back on so you can actually see it a bit larger, ready for when you want to write about it.
Okay.
And so I'll take that off the screen at the moment. And the painting that you've already poemed, our new verb, to poem, is one that I called Spring Melt. I'll just put that one on the screen. So it's a little bit larger for people to see. And this one, unusually for me, it's one that was painted with brushes. Nowadays, I normally paint with a knife unless it's portraits. And this is based on a trip that I did, a train trip, in fact, over the Rockies in North America. And it was a fantastic trip. Got on the train in Denver, and the train traveled quite slowly during the day. Overnight, it sped up a little bit because it's quite a long distance that we were going. We stopped briefly in Salt Lake City in the dead of night. Unfortunately, a lady wasn't very well, and they came to meet her off the train. Sorry, Chris says, don't you just love technology? Mixed feelings about technology, Chris. Yeah. So we stopped there, but all we saw was the station, and then we carried on. So the next morning we were into the Rockies and traveling across, and we saw just some fantastic scenery. Absolutely, definitely worth the trip if you can do it. We had 2 nights on the train, ended up in Sacramento in California. A great trip, love to do it again. But this is one of the areas that we went through, which we also visited by car on another trip over to the States. And this is where a very famous party of explorers heading west, seeking their fortune, called the Donner Party. It's a place where they stopped. They set out too late in the season. They got caught by like 20-foot snowdrifts, and it was just a horrendous tale. It makes fascinating reading. There's a book about it. I think it's on the school reading list for quite a few schools in America. But it's a fantastic, fascinating story. Very sad in places, but there were some survivors. And this place, it just really caught my imagination. And I did the painting from sketches and photographs once I got back to the UK. So that's my little story about this painting. So Roz, would you like to either tell us about what you felt or read your poem? Or
Yes, I first of all, let me apologise that when I do read the poem, I will be turning this way because the technology in my house at the moment is so appalling that I've come back on my phone. So
right.
the screen is the opposite way to the phone, so I'll apologise for that. The reason that this painting caught my eye because this was one I asked you if I could write a poem about, if you remember, Fiona.
Yes.
Is because I was absolutely drawn to the feeling of cold that you've managed to get into this painting. Even though it's called Spring Melt, it still looks quite wintry, doesn't it?
Oh yes.
I felt the coldness, but it felt uh, um, it made me feel as if I was enthused and ready to sort of walk the paths and explore. It just looked like the sort of place that was almost dangerous in some respects,
Mm.
but peaceful at the same time. So that's what drew me in, and I hope that the poem reflects what I thought. You will hear um, that some of it I can almost hear the crows. I can almost hear the the silence. It's behind that crowing. I could almost imagine that the crows were the only thing you could hear in this scene because it's freezing and yet beautiful and it draws you in. So I thought two contrasts which were very interesting.
Lovely.
So this is the poem. And I apologize, as I say, to turn away from the screen. I normally like to look at people when I'm reading, but it's impossible in this way. Beyond far cries of hungry crow, beyond the paths that weave and flow, such beauty lives in earth's slow dance, there on every twig and stark bare branch. Beyond the quiet and peaceful view, beyond the depths of old and new, there hibernates next season's bloom, sleeps, giving space to winter, time, and room. Beyond the deepest cold blue sky, beyond this scene that draws the eye, all nature joins in harmonic choir, life, for seeker to linger and admire. Beyond the light, this calming thread, beyond where man may fail to tread, this treasure, holy as can be, deepening, it will settle and remains with me.
Oh, that is beautiful, Roz. Absolutely beautiful. And you know, when you first started reading it, it made me feel cold. I wanted to go and get something else to put on. Somehow it just,
It's got
yes,
something about that's a bit weird, and yet at the same time incredibly, it pulls you in and draws you in. I could imagine that you could be very lost and very cold in this place, and actually the beauty is almost enticing you. That's what it felt like.
Absolutely. And, although it is still very cold at that point there, a lot of the snow had melted because, as I say, this party, and I presume they had heavier snow in the winter that, when I was there in the spring, they had like 20-foot snow drifts. We've never seen snow drifts like that over here, and just the idea of trying to survive through that,
Yeah,
especially in those days in the 1800s sometime, just incredible. So
yeah,
yeah, Chris says, wonderful poem, really captures the spirit of the painting. It does embody the cold. Absolutely, Chris, it does indeed. So now I must say as well to anybody that's watching and listening, if you'd like to join in the challenge of writing some poetry about the mystery painting, please do. You can either put it in the comments now while we're live, or put it in the comments afterwards if you're watching on replay. It'd be lovely to see what other people make of the painting. So not the one that's on screen, let me take that one off. But the other one, which Roz has seen now, just at the start of this show, and it has no doubt been fermenting rather than festering in the back of her brain whilst, just gently sitting in there waiting for something. So this is actually another one painted with brushes, and this one was painted down in Devon. It's on the River Coley, and it was actually painted on the spot. So I was there. I think it was probably May time or April, and it was quite chilly in the mornings, so frosty most mornings, but it warmed up during the day, and we had a lovely sunny day then. And I was there with the dogs, who were sort of tethered to a nearby bush or something, so they couldn't race off. And they warned me about anybody approaching as well, which was great. And I stood there for a very happy couple of hours painting this beautiful scene, quite bucolic. It's very, very English. It's, the trees are very typical of the English countryside, and it was just so peaceful. Unfortunately, I didn't see any um, kingfishers or anything like that, which I would have loved to have done. But maybe it was the wrong time of year for seeing them, or not quite the right sort of location. But every time I see this painting, it just takes me back to being in that place, with the sun on me. There was virtually no breeze that day, and just a happy time painting away there. So that's the background from it, with the sunlight raking through the trees, casting shadows on the water and on the grass, a little bit of ripples on the water as it was just going round the bend there, catching the light. And yeah, it was a lovely time spent painting. So, Roz, have I given you enough time to start telling us about your method here and how you approach it?
well, the first thing that obviously draws you into this painting is the prominent river, because it draws you in. So my first thought is that this river is taking us somewhere. So my immediate thoughts have immediately started to think of not journey, but some kind of movement away from just this scene onto where this river is going. And you can
Mm.
see in the background hills and trees, etc., etc., etc. So that is pulling me as well. So my first line is going to be about that. It's going to be about the fact that there is something that's taking you onwards um, through the painting. And then, because there is, you can see the horizon, you can see hills in the background. I'm going to be thinking about the way that my eye is drawn upwards and going towards that. So at the minute, I'm thinking of movement and beyond that particular line that we've got in the front of the painting towards where it's going. So that's the beginning anyway. So that's where I've started. And the line that I've written so far is, and each curve in the river takes us out and maybe upwards, out of the shadows layer into something with light and air.
Mm. Mm.
So
I like
that's
it.
just
I
and
like it.
something is not a word I would usually use in a poem. So and of course this is raw, and I would work that word. Something isn't something I would leave in a poem. Out of the shadows layer into something that with light and air. That something would have to go,
Mm.
and I'm going to
Yes.
put something in there that is more poetic than
Yep.
something.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that we'll go through this process with you today, and then hopefully
Yeah,
you will refine the poem and let us
yeah,
have it in due course to post so that people can read
indeed,
it, and maybe
indeed.
have you read it as well on a new show, another show, so that people can hear the way that you read it as well, which is, I think, lovely
Yeah.
to hear the actual poet read their own poetry.
And then my immediate next thought is about the I'm going to have glance in this line because the river is the thing that draws you, and then
Mm.
what happens is you glance up. So this line is going to have something about that pull of the background to bring you from the river up to what the vista is. So this would be something like, each longing glance above, or something of that nature. So
Mm.
uh, probably each longing glance, something above. Um, it gives you some peace and quells fear and all of those things. So I'm going to have to think about how I put that into the lines really.
Mm.
Uh,
So this is all coming from the way that the painting is making you feel inside.
yes, and it uh, I I find it very difficult. I do write ditties. I write funny
Mm.
poems sometimes, and ditties and limericks and all sorts of things. I like words. I like those things. But when I am trying to capture an artwork, which is already art without anything I do to it, I'm not going to disrespect that piece of artwork by making it funny unless it's something that you want me to do. So say for instance you wanted to give your husband a painting with a light ditty with it. I could do that for sure, but I would much rather stay with the enormity of what talent it takes to paint like this. So I'm not going to disrespect it by doing something light. I like something from the heart. You've painted from the heart.
Mm.
Why would I ever do something that wasn't something I feel? And
Mm.
I want to say from how it's making me feel, really. And I'm sure that other poets would do that differently, but it without the feeling, I don't enjoy writing poetry as
Mm.
much. I
Mm.
like I like the feeling to well the artistic part of me wants that to come out of something real, because I don't think authenticity, whether you're acting, whether you're singing, whether you're painting, whether you are doing poetry, I think authenticity is really important
Mm.
in art. So that's
Absolutely.
where
It's what makes any art form have deeper meaning and be more personal, because you've
yeah,
invested something into it, and hopefully the viewer or the listener can sense that and pick that up, and they will put their own meanings to things as well, of course, and make it personal to them. But I think you have to get that into it, otherwise it becomes a bit sterile, whether it's poetry, painting, acting, as you say, or anything. It needs that emotion in it.
yeah. it's an investment, isn't it? It's an investment that somebody puts into something, and what you're trying to do is to give the listener or the looker something that means something, that has that meaning, really.
Yes.
And it doesn't always work. It doesn't always talk to everybody. No painting can, no poem can, but at least you've tried from an authentic place. That's what I think, really.
Absolutely.
So while I'm talking, it's really difficult to come out. And I can talk for England, me. And so at the moment, I've got a rough sort of thing. I've got, and each curve in this river takes us upwards and out of the shadow, into something light, and into something light and air, which, as I said, I will change. Each longing glance tells fear and steps into something where, and again, something means that I've got to refine that in some step and forward stride towards hope. Tread upon tread, one tired foot following another. This movement is the brave new beginning. So that's where I'm going with it. It feels like a travel poem now, you see. It feels like I'm on the river or in the river, or I am the river and I'm going somewhere. That's what it feels like. I mean, the shadows in this are incredible. I mean, there's a lot of sort of detail in the way the shadows are placed on the ground. You know where the sun is before you photo this picture, don't you?
Good. Which is obviously when you're painting actually in front of the scene, which is what I love to do when I can. The sun moves incredibly quickly. It really moves around. You know, you've got to set your shadows at one point and put them in place. And then 15 minutes later, they will have shifted a little bit. Half an hour later, they'll have shifted quite a lot. But you have to set them in place at one point and have that picture in your mind and go with it. Otherwise, you would never be able to finish the painting because they will keep changing the whole time. So from a plein air painter's point of view, you just have to say, right, this is when I put my shadows in, and go with it. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm feeling that the movement is part of a bravery of self. So I'm thinking movement, a brave new beginning, something we wish for every journey. And so that's another part of where I would be looking. We deserve to enjoy our journey, don't we? And climb. When the climb is done, we've seen the whole valley, we've seen everything, and we've been part of what it is. I really think that when I eventually refine this, what's going to happen is that I am going to become the river, because it is just pulls me in, really. So
that reminds.
within sort of 15 minutes, I'm now knowing where I want the poem to begin, if you see what I mean.
And that reminds me of your poem for my painting Blustery Day, where you ended up writing that from the point of view of being the tree in the painting, which is amazing.
You know, sometimes that is one of the things that I think with some of the pictures and some of the pictures in the mind that the painting elicits, is very often the fact that it's almost impossible not to become part of the painting when you're doing this. And if there is a prominent tree or a prominent fact, in this case it's the river, it's very, very easy, therefore, to see how that would become part of how you see this scene. I mean, it certainly happens with people when you look in faces, and I think it happens in landscapes like this.
Mm. By the way, Chris says this is all very fascinating stuff. Yes, I'm just enthralled, and I'm just waiting for more.
The point is that I've been writing poems since I was 7 years old, and nearly up until my mid-20s, every single poem I ever wrote rhymed.
Yes.
I'm a rhymer by nature. I think in rhyme. But I was once told by somebody that rhyming is very outdated. So I went all through my 20s into my 30s, desperately trying not to rhyme anymore because I thought it was very old. But now it depends on how the mood takes me. I've obviously matured into a point where I don't really mind what other people think about it anymore.
Absolutely.
And I don't know whether this one is going to rhyme or not. It feels like the journey needs more space than rhyming can sometimes give. But who knows? Who knows indeed? There are some words in here that I quite like to rhyme with. Okay. There's a couple of words in here that I've put which don't fit. For instance, I've put onwards, and each curve in the river takes us upwards and out of the shadow's lair into something light and in the air. The difficulty, which is a rhyme, but the lair doesn't go with this poem. It's shadow's lair. It's not a shadow's lair. There's no lair in this. So that's got to go. So it will be onwards and upwards out of the shadows, which is enough. You don't need to say lair. Lair is a word that would indicate something that isn't very pleasant, and there's nothing unpleasant about this picture.
No, it was a very pleasant place.
Yeah, absolutely. And rather something, as I said, is one of the words. So into the light and into the air, if I so wish to keep air in. What I'm really meaning is into the freedom of that space that is the sky beyond where this is set. This is a very open painting, isn't it? It's not closed and it's not like a forest where you have trees like either side of you and you're hemmed in. This is a very open poem, and air doesn't quite get where I want to go. So in shadows and the light and space, I think, really, for now. We'll see. So are we getting somewhere where you're sort of getting where I'm going with this?
Absolutely. No, I think it's absolutely, as Chris said, it's all very fascinating, and just to hear your process, because I should imagine that although there must be similarities between different poets' processes when writing about a painting, I think each one will also be different.
That I don't know, because whenever I see poets and talk to them about poetry, you usually talk about finished pieces. Unless you're in a workshop. But I don't do workshops, and the reason I don't do workshops, I've never done a workshop in my life, and the reason I don't is because I've thought about it. I've nearly done one, but the reason I don't is because I'm 71, and do you know what? if I can't write poems that I like, I really, and it irritates me slightly, mildly, if I'm in a process where I'm galloping towards something I want to do, and someone goes, no, that doesn't sound right, or whatever. In a way, it's probably not for me. But in a workshop, you would talk about your process, certainly. Which I haven't. Okay, each longing glance.
I think just keeping an eye on the time, Roz, as well. We're nearly up to our time.
I think we've done enough for now, and then what I'll do is I'll either send you this, or when I come back next time, I'll give you the finished article.
That would be marvelous. Thank you so much. It's been fascinating just to hear how you work, and I'm using that word, but I don't like it. I know I'm going to change it, but it'll do for the moment. Like a placeholder that is going to be improved upon. So That's magic. So thank you so much, Roz. It's been a really great insight into the way that you work, and I look forward to reading the finished poem in due course. Thank you everybody for watching. It was great having Roz back on the show. After all, you know, we missed you last week, Roz, but you're back again, and we look forward to having you back in due course as well. So,
thank you. Well, thank you for being so patient.
you know, these things happen, life happens, and we just have to roll with it. So thank you so much, Roz. Thank you everybody again for watching, and I'll be back again next week with another guest and another episode of the Poetry of Painting. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Bye. Bye, everybody.